Mbote. Hello and welcome to this video. Wow, like you can tell, today I'm talking about Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. And today being the 12th day of October, the year 2022, it is of course a very special day because Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi left us on the 12th of October 1989. So 12th of October 2022 makes it 33 years from the time Le Grand Maître left us, and of course he left us with quite a lot to enjoy, quite a lot to think about, very fascinating songs and literature that he left behind, which we can only wow at, given that he died very young. You know, at only 51, he hadn't been around for so long. But if you look at the impact that he created, it makes him a very special character in Rumba Congolaise. When the story is finally told of Rumba Congolaise, Franco will definitely occupy most of the chapters because of what he was able to achieve in the short life that he lived. So Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi was born on the 6th of July in 1938, right? And he was born in his mother's hometown, really, if you wish, called Sonabata. But then, of course, Sonabata is found in the then Belgian Congo, which was renamed to Zaire, and then currently it is called the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's where Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi was born, in Sonabata. But we should say that that was, of course, the town where he was born, but he mostly grew up in the capital city of Belgian Congo, which we have said became Zaire at some point and is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the capital city then was called Leopoldville. But these days it's actually called Kinshasa, Kin Malebo. Now his father used to work with the railways company then, and unfortunately he passed on in 1949. So you know, if you think about 1949 and 1938, then it means that he left Franco while still a very small kid, actually at just about 11 years, you know. So by 11 years, in other words, Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi had already lost his father. And of course that jeopardized his chances of going to school. And so we need to say here that Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi experienced very little formal education. That is what we need to say, because of the circumstances that found him. His father's extremely early death with respect to Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. So because school was not such an option, then Franco chose a pathway that is very interesting. Now his mother used to sell bread and of course other attendant merchandise. So she used to, to sell food items, and so Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi, imagine in his tender age, had already mastered a little bit of improvisation and playing of instruments. He had a homemade guitar, he had a harmonica, and several other instruments where he used to play in the stall where his mother used to do business, specifically in a region called Ngiringiri, which is just a neighborhood really of the then Leopoldville, but now it's called Kinshasa. They like calling it a Kin Malebo. So that is the informal way in which Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi began his musical journey. But then, of course, he was fortunate enough that Paul Dewayon Ebengo was just slightly older than him, but now he had a real guitar. I told you that Franco was playing using improvised instruments, but then Paul Dewayon Ebengo was just slightly older than him, but he had an actual guitar, and so he taught Franco how to handle that formal instrument. So in 1950, Franco, just slightly younger than Dewayon and others in their neighborhood, in their hood then, formed a band that they called Watam. Now, Watam was just a local band, a band in the hood where they used to stay, and this band would actually play, in events around their neighborhood. If there was a funeral, for example, or if there was a wedding, or if there was a dowry ceremony and such, they would invite the boys in Watam band to, of course, entertain the people there. But then there came a guy called Albert Luampasi. Now, Albert Luampasi is the one who we can say exposed Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi to the studio environment. So it is actually Albert that with the Ngoma record label that recorded a few songs by, of course, Watam band with the featuring Franco and his friends, and of course all that was in their neighborhood. Now in 1953, Dewayon together with Franco attended or participated in an audition that had been organized by Henry Bowane. And then Henry Bowane was a producer, so he had an audition, and so Franco and Dewayon participated and impressed Henry Boane, who by that time was actually attached to the Loningisa studios, and that's why Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi, from the word go, he was actually aligned to the Loningisa label and studio, and therefore style of music. So because they did so very well in the audition, they were hired as studio musicians, and therefore Franco, with of course his friends, and they were term band on Loningisa label, released several songs, including a solo song by Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi that actually put him on the map of Rumba music. Was his own composition of Bolingonangana Beatrice, which just loosely means my love for Beatrice, but then of course Beatrice is the actual pronunciation given the context in which Franco existed. So Bolingonanga na Beatrice, many people turn around and ask, who is this young guy who has done such a wonderful song? So people began noticing Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi in Kinshasa, and of course it's actually rumored that it is Boane who gave him the name Franco. He was called Francois, but then Boane coined Francois to Franco. Now in 1955, Franco was again just still in Kinshasa, and they would begin working together, expanding their numbers, and of course still attached to the Loningisa studio. Actually, they even began calling themselves Bana Loningisa, meaning the children of Loningisa. Now in 56, these boys, in 1956, these boys were invited to a bar that was called OK Bar. Some people say that OK Bar was named after its owner, was then called Oscar Kashama. So, but that remains to be proven. But that has been the long-held idea that OK Bar was actually the place where these fellas became regular performers. They will do gigs to entertain revelers in the band, in the bar. But then they got into a situation where they were being given a contract. They were supposed to do some recording, but they didn't know, under which band they would use. So because they were regular performers at OK Bar, they used the name OK Jazz. So that's actually where the name OK Jazz began. So there are those who still say that OK means Oscar Kashama. There are those who say that OK could also just as well mean Orchestra Quinoa. Quinoa is the other name for Kinshasa. So whether you like to say Oscar Kashama or you like to say Orchestra Quinoa, the truth of the matter is that is how the name OK Jazz came about. And so actually exactly on that happened on the 6th of June 1956 when they were actually doing their thing there. Now At the very beginning, the band leader for OK Jazz was actually Jean Serge Jesus. So he was actually the de facto band leader of OK Jazz. Now Franco was, well, a good songwriter. Is despite the fact that he's not gone to school very well, but the talent is inherent, is innate, and so he was a very good songwriter. Actually, he had so many songs that he'd written in his own notebook. Songs that he, every time a tune passed his mind, he would write down and jot down. So he had a notebook with very many songs, and Jesus was so impressed. So he said that this is a genius in the making. Of course, that came to be confirmed later because of the level of success, really, that Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi enjoyed. Now, the formation of OK Jazz brought jitters in Kinshasa, because then there was another very serious band that was called African Jazz Band. Now, African Jazz Band was under the leadership of Joseph Kabasele, commonly called Grand Calais. So OK Jazz came, and so it began dividing loyalties in Kinua, in Kinshasa. People said, there's a new band here that is actually giving a run for their money for the orchestra, African Jazz Band. Of course, that I said was under Grand Calais, commonly called Joseph Kabasele. Now, in 1956, actually it was a very eventful year, we should say, 1956. There was a bit of, shake-up in the lineup at OK Jazz. But importantly is that there was a landmark song that was written by Franco himself, and the song is called On Entre OK, On Sort KO. That if you get into OK Jazz, on entry it's okay, but when you try to leave, you get a knockout. And this song became extremely popular. Now in 57, Jesus, as well as Felipe Rossignol Lando, were hired away by Boane. So Boane took them under the label of Sengo, and so he left OK Jazz, of course still being attached to Loningi's studio. Now Vicky Longomba became the leader upon the departure of Jesus, and of course he led the band very well. That also gave Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi some room to also express himself in terms of leadership. Now in 58, OK Jazz returned to Leopoldville. So actually they had been in Congo Brazza for about a year, and then they chose to return back to Leopoldville. Now it is said that Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi, because he's now getting a very successful, and he's enjoying celebrity status, so he began attracting the security apparatus and so on. So at one time he was arrested for an offense that was called a motoring offense, that he was not driving so very well on the road. Now when he was released, of course he went back to his OK Jazz, and he got the nickname of the sorcerer of the guitar, which could loosely be translated to mean Ndokia guitar, Ndokia guitare, the sorcerer of the guitar. Now his guitar technique was very unique. He came up with a style where he could really compete against Dr. Nico. Dr. Nico was with Joseph Kabasele's African jazz, and so Franco came up with a very unique way of stringing the guitar that, of course, made him stand out. So throughout the 60s, Franco and his band became extremely busy. They really recorded. In 67, Franco had actually upped his leadership skills. They're almost co-leading with Vicky. But then Vicky left the band in 1970, leaving it now in the hands of Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi, who became president of the band, the president of the band. And around the same time, they also chose to change the name of the band from OK Jazz to TP OK Jazz. Now in full it was Tupuiza OK Jazz, and so Tupuiza just means all important. It's the mighty, the almighty OK Jazz, so that's how the name TP OK Jazz came in. So they just added TP, Tupuiza OK Jazz, to mean that it's the almighty, it's the biggest band. You can take it to whichever site you feel like, whichever region, they'll actually tell you that TP OK Jazz, that OK Jazz was TP, was Tupuiza. It was actually extremely big and almighty. Now in 1978, okay, so in between there are so many artists that came and left. Simaro Lutumba joined, Utamai, Pepe Ndobe Opetum, and Joski Kamkuta. So all these guys in different times joined TP OK Jazz. Now in 1978, Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi had a little issue. Why? Because he composed two songs that were thought by and large to be excessive in terms of the nature of the messaging, that Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi went overboard with his lyrics of the two songs, Helen and Jackie. Actually, up to now, those songs are only played in the secret of places because of the messaging, that it's not possible to play these songs in public or for public consumption. So Jackie and Helen gave Franco 2 months in prison, and there's a video I've seen of artists who are really complaining and who are scared with that, because they were all put in and they were told to say exactly who composed the song and why they backed him up. Okay. Mobutu then, of course, ordered for his release, whether it was for political purposes or so on, because he even they gave him some recognition as especially to his achievements or the things, his contributions really to Rumba Congolaise. So that raised the profile of Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. Now he became very experimental. He released a song called Nalingakayo Yote. I just don't love you. I just don't love you. The song was actually 21 minutes. And nearly they're saying that there is no song that has met that kind of length for I'm not sure if somebody has done a song that is more than 21 minutes to break that record, but it was a a daredevil kind of move that Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi made. So Franco and his band became extremely popular. They began recruiting the likes of Madilu Multi System, the likes of Malage de Lugendo. They had so many people within that band. Now it should be said that Franco released hundreds and hundreds of songs, especially if you talk about singles. Very many of them that were released during his tenure as the president of the TPOK Jazz. Now, Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi and Tabule Rochero and Varkiski Mangona Mateta were actually called Les Trois Mousquetaires, the Three Musketeers. They enjoyed immense powers actually, courtesy of the then president Mobutu Sese Seko. They wielded a massive power. Actually, they are the ones who owned the wherewithals, the instruments. If you talk about instruments and so on of music, if you talked about studios, Barkis, for example, had the VV Edition studio and so on. So these people were extremely influential, and they were right-hand men of Mobutu Sese Seko. Now, this is not to say that they didn't have differences. At one point, Franco had to even go into exile because of differences between him and Mobutu Sese Seko. Now, Franco did quite a lot, including giving birth to 18 children. So he had 18 children. Allegedly 17 of them were girls and just one boy. And these were, fathered again. It should be said, with very many women. He had at one point or another in his life a series of women. So the kids came from 14 different women. But all this is allegedly, so that I do not want to be quoted. Now, Franco's health became very frail. He became very frail towards the tail end of the 80s. And unfortunately, on the 12th of October 1989, at a place called Namur in Belgium, he lost his life. So that is why today, being the 12th day of October 2022, we are saying it has been 33 years of Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi being away from the world of music, occasioned by death. But then his contribution is immense. You cannot say that you are going to talk about Rumba Congolaise and not mention Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. He is actually the most influential musician to have come from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And even posthumously, his songs are still very well accepted in Africa and indeed other parts of the world. So that explains, and the reason why Franco became very popular. If you compare him, let's say, with the likes of Barkis and Table, Franco was not so much educated. But his songs were themed on things that happen in society. So he picked a messaging of his songs for the masses, for the literate people, if you will. And so he talked about the common topics, the issues that affect the common man, the people who are not so sophisticated in life, but who still feel that there is a message that he carries. So many of his songs talked about real life. For example, if you listen to Mario, he talks about a young man who's gone to school properly, but then he does not want to look for a job despite having a very lofty qualifications. So what does he do? He looks for older women, Bamama Mobokoli, who take care of him. So Sugar Mom is his life. And then there's Mamu, of course, that talks about fidelity and a woman who, because her husband has gone away, keeps on doing very funny things. Franco talked about matata ya mwasi na mobile kosila tena mukili, problems between men and women will never really end in this world. He talked about attention à sida, of course, that people should be careful about HIV and AIDS. So his topics range all the way up to when he at one point answered should have been Kwame Munsi, who went to Tabule from OK Jazz and called Franco a false millionaire, and so Franco answered him back with the G.O.A.T and so on. So his topics were really varied. From doing commercial songs, he did so many commercial songs, to doing, if you talk about Asda, if you talk about Azoni, if you talk about Pech del Sol, if you talk about Honda. Okay, Honda was composed by Joski Kiambukuta, but of course the whole point is that TPOK Jazz did quite a number of songs, and Variety was the middle name of TPOK Jazz. They tackled topics that were far-reaching, that affected the day-to-day living of the average Congolese. So that's why people really identified with the Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. And so 33 years later, we still have so much to say about Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. And something else that must be said about Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi is that his guitar playing skills were out of this world. The way he would do me solo, the way he would do proper solo, were just so very well done. And staying in a band for 33 years from its foundation in 1956 also speaks about loyalty that Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi had, and that of course artists came and left OK Jazz, but he was there until, of course, death took him away. So Franco, is a preeminent musician. Even if you talk about contemporary African music, you cannot go beyond the second sentence without saying that Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi was the best of them all, most influential, and people rank him very highly in African music and beyond, because of the very many things that he achieved. So we are here just to say that we thank God that for the 51 years that he gave us Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. Franco took the years with both hands. He put so much shift into Rumba Congolaise. He produced so many songs. Many of them are still outstanding up to now. Actually, if you listen to songs like Non, if you listen to songs like Tokoma Kamarade Apamba, Chacun pour soi, all these songs just indicate that we had a talent, and that the talent was spot on. So that is just basically what I want us to share today. because of Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi and the things that he was able to achieve. In my estimation, well, of course, we've had other great artists coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and indeed the other Congo, because, if you talk about bands like Bantus de la Capitale, if you talk about Extra Musica, I'm just showing that across the generations, Zaiko Langalanga, Katela Tan International, Wenje Musica, with all its splinter groups and formations and so on. You mention all these bands, and then when you mention TPOK Jazz, you stop for a moment to remember that there once lived a very serious artist by the name Franco Luambo Luanzo Makiadi. May God rest his soul in eternal peace.